Emily Vasquez sat at her desk, the soft hum of her office's air conditioner blending with the rustling of papers. It was early morning, the world outside bathed in the warm light of spring. She sipped her coffee, staring at the cityscape beyond her office window, a mix of calmness and determination settling in her chest. At 43, she had built a life that many envied, successful, composed, and respected. A partner at a law firm, well known for her sharp mind and unwavering strength, Emily had long found balance between her career and family. Everything had seemed so perfect, until now. Her phone buzzed on the desk, breaking her moment of tranquility. She glanced at the screen. Thomas, her husband. They had been married for 15 years, a union built on love, or so she thought. She answered, "Hey, Thomas. Everything okay?" His voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. "I need to talk to you. It's about the inheritance," he said, his tone giving nothing away. Emily's heart skipped a beat. The inheritance, her late father's estate, was a touchy subject. It had always been something Emily held dear, a symbol of everything she'd worked for. But she had no idea where this conversation was going. "Sure, I'll be home by dinner." "We can talk then," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. She didn't know why, but she felt a strange chill creep down her spine. "Don't take too long," Thomas said, his voice now sharp with an edge of impatience. "This can't wait." As she hung up, Emily felt a knot of unease form in her stomach. Something wasn't right. She didn't know it yet, but that phone call marked the beginning of a battle that would shake everything she believed about love, family, and loyalty. The air in their living room felt heavy as Emily walked in that evening. The warm, golden hues of the setting sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows on the walls. Thomas was already sitting on the couch, his back straight, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. He wasn't the same man she had married. He had become someone colder, distant, almost unrecognizable. "Thomas, what's going on? What about the inheritance?" Emily asked, trying to keep the anxiety out of her voice as she sat down beside him. Thomas turned to her slowly, his eyes betraying nothing. "I've filed a lawsuit," he said, his words sharp and deliberate. Emily's mind raced. A lawsuit? What for? Her inheritance? She was about to speak when he continued, "You don't deserve it. You've been selfish, thinking you could keep it all for yourself. This is what's fair." Her breath caught in her throat, the words sinking into her chest like a blade. "You're taking me to court over this?" she whispered, her voice barely a murmur. "Yes," Thomas replied flatly. "I'm doing what's right. You've been living in this bubble, Emily. You've forgotten who you really are, and I won't let you take everything." The silence between them felt suffocating. Emily's mind reeled, struggling to understand. Her husband, the man she had trusted above all others, was now the one who had betrayed her. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, and her vision blurred as a tide of emotions rose. Anger, disbelief, and a deep, gnawing betrayal. "I can't believe you," Emily finally managed, her voice breaking. "After everything we've been through, you'd do this?" "After everything you've taken from me," Thomas shot back, his voice rising. "You don't think I deserve a share? You've kept me in the dark about your plans all these years, and now I'm fighting back." Emily's pulse quickened, the rage building within her. How could he accuse her of taking from him? She had worked so hard to keep everything intact. Her career, her family, her life. And now he was tearing it all down. "I won't let you do this," she said, standing up, her voice trembling with fury. "I'll fight you every step of the way." The next day, Emily went to her family home, hoping to find some solace, some support. But instead, what she found was a new level of betrayal. Her mother, father, and siblings were all sitting in the living room, and when Emily walked in, their eyes immediately turned to her, full of judgment. "Mom, Dad, I didn't know you'd side with him," Emily said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "How could you?" Her mother, a woman she had always admired, looked at her with a mixture of disappointment and concern. "Emily, honey, you've always been so driven, so focused on your career. But you need to see this from Thomas's perspective. He's right about the inheritance." Her father added, "Sometimes you have to think about what's fair, not just what you deserve." Emily felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "Fair? You think this is fair? You're my family, and you're turning your back on me for him." She couldn't believe it. Her parents, the people who had raised her, were now siding with Thomas, a man who had just betrayed her in the most ruthless way. "Emily," her father said softly, his tone almost pleading, "we don't want to see you hurt. We just think this is for the best." "Best for who?" Emily shot back, her anger flaring. "You're choosing him over me, over your own daughter. I can't believe this." Her mother's eyes softened, but it was clear that her mind was made up. "You need to let it go. This is the way things are." That was the moment Emily knew. She had no one left. No one except herself. Her family, her own flesh and blood, had turned their backs on her. She was alone in this fight, but she wasn't going to back down. She would not let Thomas and her family destroy her. As she walked out of the house, she felt a deep resolve settle within her. She wasn't going to just take this. She would fight and she would win. She had to. It was late in the afternoon when Emily and her lawyer, David Hayes, met in his office. David was a calm, reassuring presence, someone who had always believed in Emily's strength and integrity. "We'll fight this," he said, his voice steady. "You don't have to face this alone, Emily. I'll help you navigate this." Emily nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the battle ahead. "I can't rely on anyone else, David. I've lost everything I thought I had, but I will fight." David gave her a sharp look, his expression full of determination. "We're going to win this, Emily, and we'll start by finding the truth." The next day in court, everything seemed to be working against Emily. Her family had sided with Thomas, and the weight of the situation felt unbearable. But then, just when it seemed like she was going to lose everything, a mysterious figure appeared. The courtroom fell silent as a man stepped forward, his face hidden beneath the brim of a hat. He held something in his hand, a piece of evidence that could change everything. The man's voice rang out as he spoke. "Thomas Vasquez manipulated the trust funds. I know the truth, and I have proof." Emily's heart skipped a beat. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, a glimmer of hope sparked in her chest. The truth was coming out. Thomas's lies were about to be exposed. As the courtroom buzzed with whispers, Emily felt a strange sense of empowerment. She wasn't defeated yet. The battle was far from over, but now she had something Thomas couldn't take away, the truth. "Let's see how he reacts to this," Emily muttered under her breath, standing tall as the next round of the battle began. She knew that this was just the beginning. Emily sat across from David Hayes in his office, the weight of the papers in her hand a constant reminder of the battle ahead. The tension in the room was palpable as the air conditioner hummed softly in the background. For the first time since the shock of Thomas's betrayal, Emily felt a flicker of control. Her mind had shifted from confusion to clarity. This fight was no longer about saving her inheritance. It was about saving herself. David leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes watching her. "Are you ready to do this, Emily?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with concern. He had seen the toll this was taking on her, but he had also seen the strength she was beginning to find. "I don't have a choice anymore," Emily replied, her voice firm. Her fingers tightened around the legal papers on the table. "I'm in this until the end." David nodded, then slid a folder across the table. "I've gone over everything again. We need to be smart about this. Thomas's case is full of holes, but he's got resources, and he's going to use them." Emily opened the folder, her mind quickly processing the documents. She had to think 2 steps ahead. We need to outsmart them. Find something they don't expect. She looked up, locking eyes with David. "What's our next move?" David studied her for a moment, then spoke. "We dig deeper. We find the cracks, the ones he's overlooked. We don't just fight back. We hit hard." The next few days were a blur of meetings, calls, and legal strategies. Emily was no longer just a participant in her own life. She was the one calling the shots, the one who had taken back control. As she pored over the legal documents with David, her mind raced. She knew that Thomas was pulling strings behind the scenes, using his power to undermine her. But Emily wasn't going to let him get away with it. The courtroom, when the day arrived, felt like a battlefield. Emily sat with her lawyer, surrounded by stacks of papers, and watched as Thomas's legal team played dirty. They brought out evidence designed to discredit her, false statements, twisted facts, but Emily remained calm. She couldn't afford to react. Every time Thomas's lawyer made an accusation, Emily just tightened her grip on the papers in front of her, knowing that every move mattered. But then a new setback arrived. Thomas's team presented a so-called new witness, someone from Emily's past who claimed to have seen her act dishonestly in her business dealings. The courtroom murmured with surprise, and Emily's heart sank for a moment. This was the last thing she needed. But David was quick to respond, his voice cutting through the tension. "This witness is irrelevant. They have no proof. It's a diversion," he said confidently, giving Emily a reassuring look. She took a deep breath, nodding. "We don't let them shake us. We stay focused. We find the real evidence." Days passed, and Emily found herself spending hours reviewing every detail of Thomas's financial dealings. One afternoon, as she was scanning through a particularly complex contract, something caught her eye. It was a clause that had been overlooked, something that didn't add up. Her pulse quickened as she pieced it together. This wasn't just a mistake. This was intentional. She glanced at David, who had been quietly working at his desk. "David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I found something." David immediately came over to her side, and she showed him the contract. His eyes widened as he read the clause she had found. "This is it," he said, his voice low with excitement. "This is the proof we need." The clause revealed a hidden financial transaction, a fraudulent transfer that Thomas had made under the guise of managing their assets. It was a direct violation of the trust they had both signed, and it showed that Thomas had been embezzling money. This was the bombshell Emily needed. They rushed to prepare the evidence for the next day's hearing. Emily's heart raced with anticipation. She knew this could turn the tide in her favor, but she couldn't afford to get too hopeful. The battle was far from over. The next day in court, Emily presented the contract, her hand steady despite the nerves coursing through her. She looked directly at the judge, her voice clear and unwavering as she explained the significance of the document. The room fell silent as the truth began to unfold. "This," Emily said, holding up the contract for all to see, "is what you've been hiding all along, isn't it, Thomas? The truth is now exposed." Thomas's face went pale as the evidence was laid out before him. His usual confidence began to crack, his eyes darting nervously as his lawyer scrambled to rebut the accusation. Emily could feel the shift in the room as the weight of the evidence settled in. For the first time, Emily saw the cracks in Thomas's armor. He had been caught, and the truth was out. Her pulse quickened, but she knew not to get too ahead of herself. The fight wasn't over yet. Later that evening, as Emily sat in her office, processing the day's events, a call from her sister Anna disrupted her thoughts. "I have to tell you something," Anna said, her voice shaking. "I didn't know how to say this, but Dad was involved. He was part of the financial scheme that Thomas has been using. He used that leverage to control the family." The words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. Her father, the man she had always admired, had been complicit in this. The betrayal stung deeply, but Emily quickly steeled herself. "I don't care anymore," Emily said, her voice cold. "I'll make sure everyone knows the truth, and I'll make sure Thomas pays for everything." and his voice cracked. "I never wanted this for you, Emily. I didn't know what to do." "You should have told me," Emily replied, her voice hardening. "But I'm not backing down now. Not for anyone." As the days passed, Emily felt the weight of the battle bearing down on her. The legal victories were hard-won, but they had come at a cost. Her family was divided, and the emotional toll was beginning to show. She spent long nights alone in her office, questioning her own motives. Was she fighting for justice, or was this all about revenge? Was it worth losing everything she had built for the sake of proving her worth? As she sat alone in the quiet, her mind raced. The truth was there, and she had the power to expose it. But the emotional price was steep, and she couldn't help but wonder if winning would truly be enough. But just as Emily thought she might find some peace, the next day in court brought a new wave of tension. Thomas's lawyer presented a new piece of evidence, one that cast doubt on Emily's credibility. The courtroom erupted into chaos as Thomas's lawyer leveled a new accusation. "This isn't over, Emily," the lawyer said with a chilling smile. "You think you've won? We'll see how long your secrets stay hidden." The weight of the threat hit Emily hard, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. This was far from over. And as she looked across the courtroom at Thomas, she knew one thing for sure. She would not stop until the truth was exposed. Emily took a deep breath as she stood before the courtroom doors. This was it, the final showdown. The last step before she could finally reclaim her life, her fortune, and her sense of self-worth. The weight of everything rested on this moment, but she wasn't backing down. She had come too far, fought too hard to let Thomas win now. David Hayes stood beside her, his usual calm demeanor unshaken. "You've done everything right, Emily," he said, his voice a reassuring anchor in the midst of the chaos. "Today we end this." Emily nodded, feeling a quiet resolve settle within her. The emotional turmoil, the long nights of doubt, and the heart-wrenching betrayals. She was done with all of it. Now she was ready. She was in control, and she would win. As they entered the courtroom, the familiar faces of her family and Thomas's legal team greeted her. But this time it felt different. They were no longer her allies, no longer her support system. Emily's gaze briefly flicked to her parents, her sister, and Thomas, who stood confidently in his corner. But she couldn't afford to let their stares affect her. This battle was hers, and hers alone. The judge entered, the room falling into a hushed silence. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emily could feel the weight of every eye on her, but she kept her posture strong. She was ready for this final confrontation. She had everything to lose, but even more to gain. The courtroom drama quickly escalated as both sides prepared to present their final arguments. Thomas's lawyer, a tall man with a sharp suit and even sharper words, began by laying out his case. He spoke with confidence, accusing Emily of dishonesty and greed, painting her as the villain in a story that had been twisted for far too long. Emily's heart raced, but she wasn't going to let him manipulate the narrative any longer. She had the truth on her side, and today it was her turn to speak. When the moment came, Emily stood up, her voice clear and unwavering as she addressed the court. "This case isn't about who deserves what," she said. "It's about honesty. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's the hardest thing to do." She paused, letting the words settle in. Thomas shot her a glare, but Emily didn't flinch. She was in control now. "We all know what Thomas has done," she continued, "and I'm here to make sure the truth is heard. No more lies, no more manipulation." As Emily spoke, she felt a wave of determination wash over her. This was her moment to shine, and she was going to make the most of it. With David's support, she presented the crucial evidence, the confession video that revealed Thomas's involvement in the financial fraud. She watched as the room fell silent, the faces around her registering shock and disbelief. The video played, showing Thomas's voice, his actions, everything he had tried so desperately to hide. Emily held her breath, watching Thomas's expression twist from confidence to panic as the truth was exposed. The room was filled with murmurs, some in disbelief, others in awe of the power of Emily's revelation. "This is the truth," Emily said, her voice trembling but strong. "This is what Thomas didn't want anyone to see. But now everyone will know." Thomas tried to deny it, his face pale with rage. "This is a lie. Those are just lies," he shouted. But the damage had already been done. The evidence was irrefutable, and Emily knew it. David gave her a reassuring nod. The tide had shifted, but just as Emily allowed herself a brief moment of victory, the courtroom erupted into chaos once again. Thomas's lawyer, not one to back down, was quick to recover. He turned the spotlight back on Emily, presenting a new witness, someone from Emily's past who claimed that the video had been doctored, manipulated to destroy Thomas's credibility. The room went silent, and Emily's heart sank for a moment. This was a last-ditch effort to discredit her. But Emily wouldn't be shaken. She had already anticipated this. With a calm but steely resolve, she stood her ground, challenging the witness's testimony. "This is nothing but a final attempt to stop the truth from coming out," she said, her voice steady, though the tension in the room was thick. Her mind raced. She had fought too hard to let this last-minute accusation tear her down. The witness was lying, but Emily wasn't going to let them get away with it. She had something they didn't expect. She was smarter than this, and she would turn the tables once again. "I won't let you win," Emily said quietly to Thomas's lawyer, her gaze never leaving the witness. "This battle is over." Her voice rang out in the courtroom, filled with conviction. She wouldn't back down. No more lies, no more games. Emily was ready to take control of her life, no matter the cost. The judge listened carefully to both sides, his expression unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. The words that came next would change everything. "The court finds in favor of the defendant, Ms. Vasquez," the judge declared. "Mr. Vasquez's claims are hereby dismissed." Emily's heart skipped a beat. It was over. She had won. The courtroom was filled with shocked gasps, and some of her family members exchanged looks of disbelief. But Emily didn't care about their reactions. This was her victory. She had fought for everything she had, and she had finally reclaimed her life. David gave her an approving nod, and for the first time, Emily felt free. The burden had been lifted, and she was no longer a victim. She had come out on top, and nothing would ever hold her back again. As Emily walked out of the courtroom, the weight of the victory started to settle in. But just as she thought she could finally breathe, she caught a glimpse of Thomas standing outside, his face twisted in anger. He was making a call, speaking in low tones, and she couldn't hear everything he said. But the look in his eyes told her everything. "This isn't over," Thomas muttered, his voice cold and threatening. "I'll make sure you regret this." The word sent a chill down Emily's spine, but she didn't flinch. She had won this battle, but she knew the war wasn't over yet. Thomas might have one last card to play, but for now, Emily was ready for whatever came next. With a deep breath, she walked away from the courtroom, her future now in her hands.